You used to know what you wanted. You used to trust your own judgment. But somewhere along the way, that certainty disappeared, and now you second-guess everything. Every decision feels risky, every instinct feels suspect, and you can't quite figure out why. In this video, we're going to look at why self-doubt becomes chronic and what's actually driving it beneath the surface. We'll cover 3 specific psychological mechanisms that quietly erode your self-trust, and by the time we reach point 3, you'll understand why rebuilding self-trust isn't about thinking more positively, it's about something far more structural. There's also something I'm holding back until the very end, a reframe that makes this whole problem look completely different. A 2021 study from the University of Edinburgh found that chronic self-doubt is not simply low confidence, it's a learned cognitive pattern, often rooted in early experiences of inconsistent feedback. In other words, your brain was trained to distrust itself, and that training can be undone. Point 1. The feedback fracture. The first mechanism is what psychologists call incongruent feedback, and it's more common than most people realize. This is when the responses you got from parents, teachers, or partners were unpredictable, sometimes praised, sometimes criticized for the same behavior. Research published in the British Journal of Psychology suggests that when feedback is inconsistent, the brain stops using internal signals as reliable data. Instead, it begins scanning externally, constantly seeking approval before acting. Think about the last time you made a decision you felt good about until someone else questioned it. That collapse of certainty, that's the feedback fracture at work. But the feedback fracture is only the beginning, because what it sets up is far more insidious. Point 2. The rumination trap. The second mechanism is rumination, not reflection. The difference matters enormously. Reflection asks, what can I learn from this? Rumination asks, what does this say about me? A 2022 study from King's College London found that people who ruminate excessively show reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for clear decision-making, which is, to put it mildly, quite significant. The more you replay past mistakes, the less capable your brain becomes of making good decisions in the present. It's a vicious cycle. The self-doubt produces rumination. The rumination produces more self-doubt. If you're still here, here's the part most people miss. The trap isn't in the thinking, it's in what the thinking is trying to protect you from. Which brings us to the third and most important mechanism. Point 3. The identity debt. The third mechanism is what I call the identity debt, and this is where chronic self-doubt really lives. When there's a gap between who you genuinely are and who you believe you're supposed to be, your brain flags that gap as a threat. Self-doubt is often not about your abilities, it's about that gap. According to research from University College London, identity incongruence, the mismatch between self-perception and social expectation, is one of the strongest predictors of anxiety and low self-efficacy in adults aged 18 to 35. In a British context, this is particularly sharp. NHS waiting lists for therapy run into years for many people. Meanwhile, social media constantly presents who you're supposed to be. The pressure to perform certainty, even when you feel none, is relentless. The identity debt compounds quietly, invisibly, until trusting yourself feels impossible. How to rebuild self-trust.
Rebuilding self-trust is not about repeating affirmations until you believe them. It's about making small, consistent decisions and then honoring them. Research in behavioral psychology calls this self-efficacy scaffolding, building trust through evidence, not belief. You say you'll go for a walk, you go. You say you'll call someone, you call. Each kept promise to yourself is data your brain can finally use.
Earlier, I said I was holding something back. Here it is. Self-doubt is not a flaw in your character. It's a flaw in your data. Your brain learned to distrust itself because the information it received, the feedback, the expectations, the comparisons, was unreliable. You weren't broken. You were responding rationally to an irrational environment. Which means the question was never, can I trust myself? It was always, am I working with accurate data?
If this changed how you see self-doubt, the next video on why people who prefer being alone often had this specific childhood goes even further, and it's the one most people message me about. Which of these 3 patterns do you recognize most in yourself? Drop the number below.